if we look at bipolar, as we get more depressed, it gets more and more intense. The more intense it gets, we sooner or later get to a place where we wish we were dead. We might even try to kill ourselves, as I did at one point. That level of intensity is too much for us. We're outside of our comfort zone. We can't handle it. We don't know how to act. We freak out. We wish we were dead. Well, on the manic side, the more intense it gets, the worse we act. Everybody wishes we were dead. That's bipolar. Well, the current belief system is that this is how it works. This is what bipolar is. And the solution is to get rid of it. I'm never high, I'm never low. I'm not really living that intense of a life, I'm hiding. I'm living in fear that what happens if someday I wake up and mania is taken over? What happens if someday I wake up and depression is there? I don't know what to do, I don't know how to handle it. Make it go away. If we could only make it go away, everything would be fine. Well, we're not living much of a life either. And if we go too far, we're a zombie. We're not even living. We're just breathing. And that's not a life worth having. So we get bored, we quit taking the program, we go to more extreme states, we have no training whatsoever how to deal with it, and sure enough, we prove the argument that says we're not capable. We prove to ourselves by our own little experiment that we can't handle it. That doesn't mean that's true. What happened to me is I had a different perspective. I came into this from a totally different point of view than most. I had been teaching how the brain works and accelerated learning to corporations. I was also an ex-monk. So I thought about what was it like to live in a monastery in comparison to this. And I thought there's a lot of similarities. When you're a monk, you're afraid to go out in public because those distractions. You know, for the men, we don't want to see women because we can't deal with the sex thing. And, you know, we don't want to go out and get in arguments. We can't deal with life. We hide in our little cell so that we can stay focused on what is important to us. And what we do is instead of having a minimal life, is we put all of our attention and all of our energy into living that moment as intensely as possible. We want to live the moment so intensely that it gives us that heightened state of bliss, of equanimity. By getting rid of everything on the outside, narrowing our focus in our lives, and putting effort into increasing the intensity, we can achieve this state of bliss. That's my background. I spent years working on that and developed the abilities to at least focus enough to have some experiences with that. Well, what happened is once I started looking at depression and mania in a different way, I found that I actually had it within my ability to increase my range. I didn't have to fear the normal ups and downs of normal people anymore. I had enough wisdom and enough insight, enough self-control, that I could be a little high, just like everybody has a little high, excited day. I could be a little down, but I knew how to control the depth of it so that I had practices that would get me out of it if it got too deep. Being able to do that and maintain the intensity taught me that we can live a rich, deep, intense life, much more intense than the intensity of depression and mania, in the moment, within a normal range of normal people. And then the breakthrough started to happen for me. I was at a talk for the Department of Mental Health for San Bernardino County. It was their annual dinner. And I was in an incredibly deep depression. And while the talk was coming and they were announcing and everything, I was contemplating what these states were like, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual parts were for me. And I remembered that I was once in a state like this before, out in Cancun, and I tried to kill myself. It was too much for me. And here I am, getting ready to go out and talk publicly in front of people, and I'm having the same state. And I'm feeling okay, I'm not having a problem, I can still talk. And I did okay, I didn't do my best talk, But I did good enough that it's up on YouTube right now, you can go see it. So I found that I could perform even during one of my deepest depressions in my life. And I found that what I could do was expand my range. I found that I could function at levels that before were way too intense for me, only now I'm experiencing them even more intensely. But they're not controlling the way I react to them. I had the ability to go into fairly deep depressions and function normally. People wouldn't even know it. I'd have to tell them that I was depressed. They'd go, oh, you're manic today, aren't you? No, I'm performing right now. Doesn't mean I'm manic. It means that's the energy level I need to do this performance. Could be deeply, deeply depressed, but nobody would know it. Same thing on the other side. And I found that there's a range that normal people do get to. The depressed side is what they call situational depression. Situational depression is when something horrible happens to us. We lose a loved one. We have a great tragedy in our lives. And it's normal for us to go through a very intense emotional and mental and spiritual experience. It's normal for us. Everyone sooner or later will go through that. And guess what they turn to talk about it? Us. Those of us that have been through depression. Because we're not afraid to talk about it. Those of us that have learned that we can function while we're depressed, and we gain some insight and understanding from it, are there to help them. At least at that level. And everyone has had a little hypomania in their life. Most of us. Anybody who's woken up in Christmas morning expecting to see the presents there knows what it means to be a little bit hypomanic. You couldn't sleep all night because Santa's coming. We know what that feeling's like. It's just a matter of degree to get into the state of hypomania, where your mind is racing and you can't stop and you've got a little extra energy. And it happens when we cram for exams. It happens all kinds of times. Question is, how do we function when we're in that kind of state? The belief is we're not capable of it. But there are many people who have proven that we can be a little bit hypomanic and control our behaviors and recognize the edge when we're starting to lose control and take measures to cut it back. Well, what happens is some of us say that we would like the fullest life possible, and because of our behavior and because of the way we're accountable to others and we're trusting others, so I can ask those around me and my doctors and my wife, am I acting well? And if we can do that, we can go to the next level, which means we can see the entire picture, the picture that other people never got to see. We can see it in its entirety. Now, some people would say the depression looks like a horrible picture, but how many of us go to the movies and walk out crying and saying, that was a beautiful movie? I go into deep depressions and say, that was a beautiful movie. It didn't control my reaction to it. It had no power over me. I found meaning in it. It gave me wondrous insights. I can't imagine not having that experience. Now that's a lot for people to take. That's pretty shocking. But we don't always have to go that far. All of us can go whatever is our comfort range, and we can expand it a little bit. We can expand the range from a minimal range where we're in fear of any highs and any lows. We can expand it a little bit so that we're starting to live the same life as a normal person, but be accountable for how we're reacting to it. That's within our grasp. We can be taught how to do that. So the question is, if those are our choices, a boring life where we're living in constant fear of ever getting a little high or a little low and thinking we can't control it, or a life where we can stay in control no matter what confronts us, which one would you rather have? If we can build that kind of a life, we will be no longer afraid of our condition.